Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Who am I sharing this conversation with?
This is Dr. Zuleika Adams.
Oh, yes, I thought so. Good morning. God bless you, woman of God. Um, my assignment is to help you do a great thing that you do. I'm so excited about this because you are going to help me today. I know that this is helping me. So I've been reading your material. I was like, oh yes, this is just, oh my God, so needed, so needed. So that
It's 50 minutes, my goodness.
I know.
So I'm going to have to edit considerably, but that's okay.
But as your information, that you provided will be in the on-demand room, so persons can then have a chance to, go in and read it. And if you were to provide your professional email, if they had a question or something, they could perhaps reach out to you that way.
Okay, that's good.
Is there anything, I have, of course, your all of your information and Vita. Is there anything that you want me to emphasize? I'm trying to get you on as soon as I can and without a whole lot of phylactery, get you up. So, is there anything additional other than what I have? Because I'm gonna do a synopsis of the paragraphs that you provided. I'm talking about your bio, that is.
No, that's it.
Okay. All right.
But let me PowerPoint. Now, who's putting up the PowerPoint? Is the tech team doing that?
Now, that is my understanding that the tech team is to do that. I'm sorry, one moment. Yes, that is my understanding that they are to do that. I'm going to text someone right now, make sure that that is done. Okay. Because this whoever. Okay, tech team, I got a question. I need you all to holler back at me. Could you take your microphones off mute if you hear me?
It's me, Dad. I don't have the email. I don't have the PowerPoint. I'm trying to get it right now.
Oh, okay. Dr. Adams, that's my daughter who's on the tech team. I didn't know she was assisting me. She don't live here, but I'm like, tech team, I got a question. So she's trying to reach out and get that. Now I have it, so maybe I should just, if I send it to her.
And who will advance the pages? I just want to talk. I don't want to be worried about that.
Right, you don't have to do that.
Okay.
That would be done by the tech team. Yes, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to forward this to my daughter so that she doesn't have to wait. I'm letting her know. All right. Ms. Zaruya, Alex, can you hear me? Okay, so as I shared, Zaruya, I sent you, excuse me, Dr. Adams' presentation. As you are getting that situated, her question is, she just wants to present. So if you would follow along and do the slides for her so that she doesn't, you know, of course, that will help expedite and ensure that she can utilize the time, all of her time.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. All right, Dr. Adams, she has you.
Okay. Ooh, I'm so excited.
All right.
I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much I want to talk about,
And
help
there's so
people
much that needs to be talked about. My daughter and I both this morning was saying, talking about it, saying, oh gosh, she is excited about listening. And right now, Dr. Adams, the room is, the people are coming in the room, and just
Okay.
that it's filling up. It's about 30 of us in here so far. Just a wonderful opportunity to take this information, not just here in New York State, you know, and then, but this presentation is being helpful to people that, excuse me, joined in on this Congress opportunity. So it is it is just great. Just,
you know,
I'm sorry. Okay. Dr. Adams, your microphone, can you hear me? Okay, Dr. Adams, if you just check your mic and or adjust, because you're going in and out with feedback. I'm not hearing you. Nope, I'm still not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Okay. So I'm going to move it very close to me. Is that better?
That's much better. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Let me ask so that when I share this information, Vice President of Behavioral Health, is that Palladia?
Okay. Yeah, I'm retired from there. Yes.
Right. I wanted to give the right or correct pronunciation.
Yes.
All right. Just wonderful. I'm looking at, and I've read this, but again, I'm just, the articles that were in essence, Love as an Addiction and the Art of Forgiveness.
Yes. 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 You'd be surprised how many people are addicted to love.
Yes. Now your devotional, is that to be released soon? Is it close to being ready?
I would say by the fall. Yes.
Okay, great. I'm surely gonna get me one. It's not just for women, is it?
Oh no.
Okay.
Anybody who has feelings.
Yeah, well, I need to get a box of them and pass them out. Yes, that's wonderful. So we are scheduled to go on. Okay. Zaruya, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, someone has asked a question and I want to get this clear. If you could research it or ask Sister Brenda, they're asking about the on-demand
Yeah.
page.
When I have an answer, I'll put it in the Q&A. I'm just waiting for someone to respond back.
All right, thank you.
So I should stop talking at 11:20. Is that it? And then 10 minutes for questions?
That is correct.
Okay. That's so impressed.
I'm sorry.
You guys are so efficient. I'm impressed.
Oh, well, yesterday was was the first day, and surprisingly, things went well. And I dare not take any credit. It's the tech team has really done an outstanding job. They have spent hours pulling this all together. Dean Williamson, of course, it just really has been when they say a labor of love and assignment, it was a labor to pull all of this together on such a magnitude and really not in a whole lot of time. And I am just as impressed the way things went. The rooms that I moderated yesterday and just got off one this morning. I mean, the energy, the questions, to me, it was, this is just me, and it's being recorded. So I said it and I'll repeat it. To me, this is better than just the quote unquote traditional Congress that our associations and state conventions have had.
Yes.
This gives people an opportunity to really just to get it without where my class, walk into this building, going here, let me get me something to eat before I go, leave the hotel, get in a van. This right here, this is new normal that I think that I could get used to. It's just so much easier. Financially, it works. Churches don't have to pay hotel and transportation and food, and you could be eating your yogurt and stuff right now while it's going on. So it works. I'm really enjoying it, and it gives you, the presenter, an ease of presentation. You really can just go. You just go with it.
Right.
So
Right. This is here to stay.
Yes. Hmm. Now, Dr. Adams, I just asked Dean Williams, do we have to wait until 10:30 or can we start early? Because that would give you more time. And then also because of it being recorded, people will be able to go to the on-demand page and if they join us as we're going, then I don't want people to get all offended because we started early, but that'll give you more time. So I'm waiting for his response.
Okay, wonderful.
Because we have the tech person ready, and so people are here and they are ready. They are excited. This Elsa
Man,
Scotland, Vice President of the Women's Department, says, yes, this virtual works. Kudos to you all. Yes, it is working.
you know, it's interesting. I've done, excuse me, several of these now, and it seems to me that the next need that's emerging is that people want the information, but they also want to talk about how they're doing. And that has not yet been provided, where it's really a group to talk about how are we doing, to actually do check-ins. And so, you know, I'm looking for ways to facilitate that, because the more I do this, the more I recognize how people have gone underground with their feelings, and it's starting to show up in strange ways, because they're not talking about it, or they don't have an accountability partner. They don't have some place to really vent and say, you know what, I haven't been outside in 3 months, and now I'm afraid to go outside. What do I do about that? You know, and so I'm really starting to be in touch with how much pain people have been in the last 3 months, and really need a space where they could just say, this is what I'm going through. This is what I've been going through, and I need to see the light of day on this. It's really grabbing up, you know?
And then the element of, as I've spoken with persons in my paraprofessional capacity, the element of fear of, am I walking through a cloud of COVID? You know, where is it? How is it affecting me? The authentic fear that they have of just going in the store, you know, just, they are really in some, I see it, I see people in the car by themselves with a mask on, because they are just in that place of, I don't want to get this. And for those who have had either themselves or those that they love go through it, and or even to die as a result of, they are just like really dealing with this in a real hard way with their children. They don't want their children to go out and play. They don't want it. And it's really a challenge. So
Yeah, they're hyper vigilant about everything, you know.
oh yeah,
Everybody is toxic. And
everybody.
so, yes, and you know, that's not gonna end well. You know,
Mm-mm.
people manage some of those feelings, and it's understandable, especially if you have pre-existing conditions.
Yes,
You know, you don't want this virus, you
you do.
know, and I'm, you know, so, you know, being careful, being safe, being mindful, but yet, you know, we have to be able to live. We have
Mhm.
to bring this time.
I know a young lady who has put in a little spray bottle a solution of bleach and water, and it is not 3 parts water and 1 part bleach. It's more bleach than water. She keeps it in her purse. Everything she goes out, she is spraying that solution of bleach and water on she'll spray it on you. She is like, back up, get away. Everything. She
Yeah,
is, if she goes to the store, she's saturating the cart. The door handle, the everything with this bleach.
yeah,
Her hands, the palms of her hands are just red and worn from her just spraying this real strong, you know, bleach off
yeah,
the She sprays it on her children's hands. The kids are crying. They're like, "Mommy, no." But she's like, "We can't. We got to be well. We got to be well." And it's going in a deep, almost paranoia.
Yes.
Um,
Sounds like she's over to obsessive compulsive disorder.
yeah. And don't talk to her about coming to church, going back to church when churches, start opening up the more. She's like, "Oh no, I'm loving the Lord right here in my house. I'm not going." She ain't thinking about. She's like, "Oh no." She said, "The Lord heard my prayer," because she said, I was tired of that. Turn to your neighbor anyway. She said, "So now I've done fixed it. I ain't got to turn to the neighbor, shake a neighbor, touch a neighbor." But that's where she and many others are.
I know, but they're holding their families hostage.
The children are hostage. They stand looking out the window on a beautiful day, not being able to go even in their yard to play.
Oh.
Because she is afraid and will have to bathe them and put two little capfuls of bleach in their bath water.
Oh. It's hurting them.
Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned. I said that I'm concerned about, as you shared, her hypervigilance, which is now going into compulsive disorder, because I'm like, it's knocking on the door. You really are going to have to talk about it and process it, and
Yes.
not just talking to yourself and or listening or watching CNN. Talk to a professional. Right?
But she needs to start CNN for a while. Turn it off.
Yeah, I said, turn it off. I said, find an old episode of Good Times. Something that's going to make you laugh. Or, really, you're going to have to, the cooking channel, anything, but turn off CNN and MSNBC and all of it. Between the social unrest and COVID, it's just, the song, "Nobody Bring Me No Bad News." That's his.
Yeah. Somebody just wrote they have Clorox wipes in their cars.
Yes. And they did share. They said, Rita said, and like the young lady, "I'm not looking forward to returning to church anytime soon." Wow. Dr. Adams, you have your work cut out for you.
That's what the Lord has equipped me to do. Hallelujah.
Yeah. So here we are at 10:28. The dean told me, "No, Reverend, Reverend Dr. Alex, you gotta go at 10:30. So we got one more minute and we will be going on. I'm going to do introduction, and we then are going to get ready to put you up. I'm not going to be long, and we're going to be going forward.
Okay, good. So you in the helping profession as well?
Yes, I am. I support the Onondaga County Department of Health and Mental Health Services. When their caseloads are overwhelmed, they will then refer, ask me, can I take on to do some supports for them. Also, persons that are in need of guidance and support that have had drug and alcohol, and I do this an intervention, like preacher to the choir, mindfulness, meditation, and use other trans-theoretical models to help to develop a change of behaviors. And
excellent.
Yeah. So a lot of times they don't realize that I'm doing and using some of the stuff while I'm preaching to help them. So
listen, it all comes together. It all works together for good. Let me tell you.
It sure does. I tell them.
I think preaching ought to be healing as well. Something
Yes.
for doctor for the heart.
I tell people all the time, Jesus had a private session when in John chapter 5, the woman that was in the act of adultery, I'm not her, I'm sorry, the woman at the well, excuse me, because all we got was about the 5 husbands. So I look at it and say, what was going on with her? Did she have 5 husbands? Where was the pain? What happened? I dig that up. But I said, she then said, come and see a man who has told me everything that I've ever done. So there's obviously that there was conversation that the Holy Spirit didn't reveal to John to write, because that wasn't our business.
Right.
But
right.
Jesus did some session with her, because she said, is not this the Christ? Because he told me everything that I, and that people were impressed and came to believe because they heard him, but she was the catalyst to get them to wholeness.
Yes, yes.
All right, we are getting ready, and here we go. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. We are celebrating the goodness of God. I thank God for this day, the day that he has made, and I pray that you have checked your account to see that there is an overload of mercies that the Lord has blessed us with. So we thank him for that. I'm grateful and thankful for our Congress of Christian Education, our president of our convention, Dr. Washington, and our Congress president, Reverend Dr. Banks, our dean, who has put together with these phenomenal preachers, teachers, presenters, helpers, such an event as this, our virtual conference 2020. And this morning session that we all are going to be blessed in by Dr. Zalika Adams. I'm excited about it, and I'm not going to be long getting ready to put her up. So thank you all for joining in. A couple of housekeeping things. We want to thank Project Hope for undergirding and underwriting and supporting this conference. We thank God for them and for all that they have done. We are grateful for their consistent union of infusing together, reaching out in health and prevention education with our National Baptist Convention, and of course here in New York State. We say we are better together. We again thank God for each of you and for our presenters. So we will pray. I'll share some background very briefly about our presenter today, and then she will get ready to help us as we're praying. Father, thank you for this great day. Thank you for all that you have done, Lord. I thank you for allowing us to now literally be in our homes, in our offices, gaining, learning, and expanding, that we now are gaining information that is not only going to help us, but it is going to give us the ability to help those that we are attached to. Our sphere of influence is going to become better because we are going to be helped. Lord, I pray that you give the woman of God a unique anointing today, that she speak life to us, empower us with information. And God, I pray that it be attached to us permanently. Let it be infused in our hearts, that we can recall it through the power of the Holy Spirit to use to help others. Let us not forget it, but write it on the tablets of our mind. And Lord, I thank you for this wonderful, wonderful creative experience that you have given to us in this age, that the enemy thought he was doing something with COVID, but God, you have taken the church outside the walls that we might be even more effective. I pray that technically everything will go well. Thank you for the tech staff and everyone that has worked so diligently to bring this to pass. Now, have your way as only you can. And for that, I thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Our presenter today is Reverend Dr. Zalika Adams. She is the assistant pastor of the Mount Carmel Baptist Church, where she's been serving for the past 29 years, where the Reverend Dr. Anthony Lowe is senior pastor. She's also the former chief of staff for Dr. Lowe in his role as moderator of the United Baptist Association of New York City and vicinity. She's very well prepared with a master's degree and her doctoral work a master's, on divinity from the New York Theological Seminary, and a doctor of ministry from Drew University, focusing in on congregational organizational growth and development, specializing in servant leadership. An extensive history in public service. She's retired as Vice President of Behavioral Health for Palladia Inc., a nonprofit social service agency. And she has launched her own Adams Consulting Group, which provides professional, executive, and spiritual coaching for those seeking to realize their goals and unblock their barriers to excellence. She has an extensive roster of clients locally and nationally. She's doing great work, everyone. She's published 4 times in Essence Magazine on The Black Superwoman, a 2-part series on love as an addiction and the art of forgiveness. She has co-authored an article for the National Association of Social Workers on social work and womenist practice. And I'm looking forward to a fall release of her 21-day devotional entitled My Faith, My Feelings. She's a mother, grandmother of 2, which I call double heartbeats. I thank God for my little grandson, who next to God, she says, are the joys of her life. What a blessing. We are about to be blessed by this phenomenal lady. So, Dr. Adams, help us, and good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Grace and peace to you, my father's children. I greet you in the name that's above every name. And we name his name to be Jesus the Christ. Of course, protocol has already been established, but I would like to honor Reverend Dr. Carl Washington, President of Empire Baptist Missionary Convention, Dr. Banks, Dr. Williamson, and our moderator, who has just been delightful as we've been chatting in preparation for today. So let's get to the issue at hand. The theme is a new thing, peace of mind post-COVID-19. And I'd like to start off by even answering the question, why should we even be concerned about our emotional and mental health? Why should we even talk about it? Well, first of all, there is no way that we could have lived through the last 3 to 4 months during COVID and the chaos that has been going on around racial issues unscathed. So let's just establish right here that all of us have had feelings, all of us have had issues as we have gone through the last 3 months. Our world has been turned inside out. The stressors have been relentless. And so whether our issues are minor or whether our issues are severe, there is no way that we could even get to this present moment without acknowledging that we have felt some things, we have lost some things, and actually we may have even gained some things. So why should we be concerned about our emotional and mental health? Well, the first thing we want to establish, we ought to be concerned because God is concerned. Jesus is very concerned about our whole selves, our mind, our body, our spirit. He's interested in healing our broken bodies, our disturbed minds, our troubled spirits, so that we can be restored and in renewed communion with him, ourselves, and the people around us. As we look through scripture, we see Jesus going into the villages, teaching and preaching and healing. And actually 1/3 of his ministry was concerned with our health in all of its dimensions. Didn't he say in Matthew 4:23, he healed all manner of sickness and disease. And that means our emotional and mental and psychological selves as well. The Bible is filled with examples of those people dealing with depression. You remember Elijah, he found himself under a broom tree, under a solitary tree in the middle of the desert. He was so distraught, so burnt out, so tired that he was thinking suicide. We can look at Job. lost everything, despondent, but yet in the middle of it, he didn't give up. We could think about Tamar. Tamar was raped and had to repress and push those feelings down and managed to go on and live a life. But those things were a part of her. And those feelings that we have are a part of ourselves. And so when we talk about feelings and we talk about peace, and so today we want to talk about peace. So I like to divide our time together in three parts. I'd like to talk about the peace as shalom. What do we understand shalom to be? And then we're going to talk about the things that disturb our peace. And then we want to talk about how to make our way back to shalom. Shalom, disturber of shalom, and then how we make our way back to shalom. The concept of shalom is very multi-layered, and it's broader in scope than what we usually think about when we think about peace. When we think about peace, we think about absence of noise. We think about absence of chaos. But when Jesus talked about peace, he was talking about something a little deeper. We have to recognize that Jesus was a Jewish rabbi, right? And so when he talked from the Torah. He talked about the concept from what he had learned and what he had experienced. And the word for that is shalom. And shalom is deeper than and wider and more complex and more encompassing than peace as we commonly understand it. Shalom has 5 parts. The first part is that shalom means to be safe. It means to be whole and complete. In shalom, our needs are met. Number 2, in shalom, we have healing without disease or pain. And that means mental conditions as well. In shalom, we have meaningful, intimate relationships with others and God. In other words, we don't have to feel like we're by ourselves because we have an audience of one with God. Shalom also brings beauty in our lives, and we are free from hostility and inner turmoil and the distracting noise. So when we talk about, I sure wish I had me some peace and quiet, we're talking about having a life that is free from distractions and chaos, but it's also a place where I am safe, I am uninjured, I am whole, and that I have enough time to be able to sit and reflect and to think. When we have shalom, we have our fullness of well-being and we are in right relationship. Now, during these last 3 months, it is safe to say that our shalom has been disturbed considerably. Our shalom has been bothered. And I just want to have established that God wants us to have peace in our lives. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is not the absence of problems, but peace is being able to find our center and our anchor as we go through the issues that are being presented. And so God wants us, even during this pandemic, God is up to something during this pandemic. He wants us to understand that there are lessons to be learned during this time. There are new ways and new things to be considered. There are things that are coming up in our consciousness that perhaps we haven't dealt with before. We haven't allowed to come up because of the busyness of our lives. And during this time, God has put us on a cosmic time out. We have been in a time out. We've been sheltering in. We've been social distancing. We've been going through grief and despair. We've had to relook at who we are and what we are. And in that process, God, at the end of this, surely there's some glory that is to be done. But we got to press through the process. So I want to spend the next few minutes talking about what has been the disturbance in our lives around this shalom. The first thing, let's just establish, and I like for you, where you are, where you sit, to allow your feelings to come into the room. I want you to, for just a few minutes, allow, give way for, make space for those things that have been on your mind during this COVID and chaotic period, and to allow them to come into the room, because our feelings speak to us and God can touch our feelings. But let me run through some of the things that I'm not imagining it, because I'm part of this process too. I have been feeling things, I have been experiencing things, I have been going through things, the range of feelings during this period. And I want to make myself a part of this community as we talk. How has the season of COVID and crisis affected our shalom? Well, first of all, let's just talk about the range of feelings. Many of us have had many losses during this time, so it's reasonable that we will feel depression. And depression is the appropriate response to loss. Many times we think depression is just when somebody dies. No, depression is bigger than that. Depression and grief are bigger than that. When we have lost something, our body responds through a feeling called depression, called sadness, sometimes feeling like hopeless, sometimes feeling like despair. And it's not just death. It could be the loss of a dream. It could be the loss of our wages. Come on now. During this time, people's money has gotten messed with. For those who are on hourly wages and have been, quote, non-essential workers, which that term just bothers me, then people have all of a sudden been out of work. They don't have money. And when you don't have money, it's not just the finance, but other things get affected. Then guess what? If you don't have money, you have food insecurity. You have housing insecurity. It adds on to the worry. And so the depression turns into anxiety, a constant worry. How am I going to survive? What am I going to do? How am I going to make it? Suppose I get this COVID in the middle of it. And so during this period, as we are going through multiple losses, uncertainty, from day to day, we didn't know what was going on, right? And so I don't know about you, but in the thick of this thing, I was starting to not want to answer my phone because I didn't know where the next bad news was coming from. Our congregation got hit. We had multiple losses, multiple people in the hospital, including our pastor. And so there was panic. What are we going to do? How are we going to manage this? And then with the sheltering in, let's talk. Now, we love our children, and if you're married and you have a maid or you got a boo or you got somebody in your house, then it's normal in our everyday routine is that we get up, we go to work, we go out, we come back, we're glad to see them when we come back. But guess what? Up in the house all day, 24 hours a day for weeks at a time has created many a family conflict. Parents now have kids home all day. The kids are restless. They can't get out and play. They are sheltered in and they don't get to see friends. There's no place for that energy. And yes, we love each other, but guess what? In any relationship, you have to have together and you have to have separateness. You have to find a way to have some time of your own. It's one thing to have too much time, and it's another thing to have no time to yourself. And so many of us have been cooped up together with the people we love, but guess what? When we're together too often, conflicts start to come. And so there might be unrest in the home as well. It is no accident that during this time, uh, uh, domestic violence rates have gone up, substance abuse has gone up. People are looking how to cope with the relentless stressors that we have. And so they might be drinking a little more. People who've been in recovery might be entertaining substances that could pull them out of recovery, which would have a devastating effect on self and family. And there are marital conflicts and all kinds of things going on. I want to tell you a little bit more about depression and grief. Depression has some relatives, and the first cousin to depression is anger. Depression and anger are first cousins. The more depressed somebody is, as a clue as to how angry they are. And there are many reasons to be angry right now. The loss of routine as we know it. I don't know about you, but I kind of had a rhythm to my day. But during this period, everything has been thrown off. Our stability has been thrown off, our safety has been thrown off, and we have been required to come up with some new coping skills. I mean, think about it. Let me just add this, that this sheltering in and this social distancing, for those of us who have had pre-existing conditions, physically, if you've had pre-existing conditions, then it makes it harder to recover from COVID. Also, if you've had pre-existing mental conditions, it also makes it harder to cope and recover from COVID. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you were sad, if you were struggling with depression before, if you were struggling with family issues or marital issues, if you've been struggling with PTSD, and we know that PTSD is a stress reaction, if you've had a traumatic, terrifying event in your life, and it keeps coming back and you keep getting triggered, then that memory starts to cloud our minds and we start to remember where we were wounded. And I want to hold on to that because we are all in the process, perhaps, of PTSD when we think about the historical and generational trauma that is going on with us as a people. But hold that thought. I want to get back to the loss of our routines. Simple things. Being able to go to the store when we feel like it. I'm a movie buff. Do you know how much I miss going to the movies? Do you know how much I miss going out to dinner with my friends? It's a part of my life. It's a part of how I create. It's a part of how I have community. And all of that kind of got wiped out. And we've had to find different ways of coping. And for those who are worried about the contamination of COVID, let's just put some words and some understanding to some of the feelings. There's some of us that are so terrified of getting COVID that we are walking around, we are wary of people, we're giving people the side eye all the time. If somebody coughs a block away, we shudder because the last thing we want is to get this virus. And so it's making us, some of us, if we tell the truth, come on, tell the truth, shame the devil. Some of us are actually getting a little bit paranoid. We're hypervigilant. I know I had to work with that. I have some pre-existing conditions. And so, I'm mindful when I walk around people, but I had to make a decision. Social distancing does not mean social isolation. I want to say that again. Social distancing does not mean social isolation. It means that, yes, we can take a walk take your precautions, put on your mask, put on your gloves, have your hand sanitizer. And I'm talking about regular hand sanitizer, nothing too strong that's going to burn the skin off of you, but regular hand sanitizer. Yes, we have to be mindful. We have to be careful. We have to be aware. But God also wants us to live life. And so social distancing does not mean social isolation. And in this time, for those who are live alone, or even those who don't live alone, the whole notion of loneliness has now started to come to the surface. Many people feel lonely during this time. And I want to talk to you, I want to pause right here, because the whole notion of loneliness often has a stigma attached to it. So people don't want to say, they don't want to confess, they don't want to admit that they feel lonely during this time, because somehow it is implied that if you are lonely, then there's something wrong with you. And loneliness is, it's a feeling state. And when we're lonely, what do? We have a longing to be connected to like-minded people. When we are lonely, anybody won't do, because if that was the case, then we could walk outside to our local bodega, have a conversation, and come back and not feel lonely. No, anybody won't do. Our loneliness is a longing to be connected in a meaningful way to another human being. The feeling of loneliness is like a child standing outside a glass watching their friends on the inside, laughing it up, having ice cream, but somehow the lonely person doesn't have access to that. And so many of our seniors who live alone and who are without visitors feel that. But let me also just say this, that there are different types of loneliness. There's the subjective loneliness, which is the feeling of being alone in this world. It feels like the world is passing you by, and that it's a feeling of feeling forgotten. But let me tell you, you could be in a house full of people and still feel lonely. I know I got a witness up in this room today about that. You could be in a house and still feel lonely because the heart connection for some reason is missing. I got to tell you, I am a divorced person, and some of the loneliest feelings I ever had in my life is when I was married. Now, I don't wish that on anybody, and I pray for those who are married that you have a happy marriage, that there's love, there's passion, there's intimacy, and it's in abundance. Everybody is not fortunate that way, and some people are working through a crisis so they can return to the love that was flowing. But there are many times in life that you can be around people and still feel lonely. And so that is subjective loneliness. Objective loneliness. Subjective loneliness is when, in fact, you do live by yourself. There are a lot of people that live by themselves, and they are lonely, and they have to find a way to stay connected. Let me tell you something that I did a few weeks ago. My grandson lives with me, but he's 20, he has his own life. And it was one of those days, and I believe I have a witness in here, that this sheltering in was starting to get on my nerves. And I said, I need some people, I need some people. And so I called a friend of mine, and I said, listen, I have an idea. Social distance doesn't mean social isolation. You got a car, I got a car. You pack a lunch, I pack a lunch. Let's meet in the parking lot. Let's pull our cars together, put our mask on, and talk window to window. My friend met me. We were at the Cross County parking lot. The only 2 cars in the parking lot. I rolled up, she rolled up, had my lunch, I ate it through the mask, talked, we laughed and talked for about an hour. And I tell you, that meaningful contact made all the difference in the world. And when I came back home, I had changed my mental landscape. When we have heart-to-heart connection with people, it allows us to change our mental landscape, and the burden, the heaviness of this COVID that's weighing on us was lifted for a time, and I was okay. And so periodically, that's what I do. I call people, say, hey, what you doing? You know, we meet at a park. I sit on one end of the bench, they sit on the other. And we laugh and we talk and we connect. And I feel like it was an answer from God. And so our loneliness during this time is very, very real. Social distancing does not equal social isolation. Sheltering in does not mean that we hold everybody hostage, but you can take your kids outside for a walk. Make sure they're protected. Let them run some of that energy off. So when they come back, they're not on your last nerve. You know, I'm talking real here. I'm talking real. Now, let's add the next layer. The next layer is during this time, with everything that we have been going through, with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, the Amy Cooper lady, and now this rash of lynchings and rope hangings, people of African descent, on top of COVID, now we have all of the generational and emotional and historical trauma laid on us. I don't know about you, but this period has been so heavy and so deep and so amazingly graphic that if you never had PTSD, you might be triggered right now, because we have seen these things and now we can't get away from it. I remember a long time ago, the last poet said the revolution will not be televised. Well, guess what? It is televised. And we see when George Floyd was under that man's neck, that rang out for us in very deep ways. And I have been working with a number of people for them that as a people, because we are the most resilient people on the planet, we have passed, we have pressed it down, we have suppressed it, we have repressed it. But now with this onslaught of things that have happened to us, our collective memory is now being triggered. And we are remembering things. We have this generational weariness that we are wearing, and the psychological wounding that has happened to our minds, our bodies, and our souls is up for inspection. And what do I mean by that? When we talk about trauma, we're talking about any terrifying incident that we have witnessed or experienced, or that's in our bones, in our muscles, that has come to light. And there's three parts to a trauma. There's the event, there's the experience of the event, and then there's the effect of the event. And people of God, people who are in Black bodies, we are going through something right now. I don't know how many tears we have cried when we heard that brother call out for his mama. I know that that brought up some grief reaction in our people. I know that that brought up a grief reaction when we think about our sons and daughters that have been murdered at the hand of white supremacy. But it's not just that, because if it was just that, then we could put it in a box and put it away and cope the best way we know how. But it's not just that. What it has done, it has brought up generations of this. And now with all of the pictures, we had Juneteenth, all of our collective unconscious is now up for inspection. So yeah, we're remembering the Middle Passage. And for the more sensitive of us, we feel it in our bodies. We feel our ancestors coming across the transatlantic slave trade. We feel those whips and the chains. We feel that rape. We feel that Jim Crow. We feel those separate but equal water fountains. Many of us have lived through that. We feel those microaggressions that were not 50,000 years ago, but today. Difficulty on the job because of racism. Difficulty getting an apartment because of racism. Difficulty in the educational system. You know, when I was in high school, my guidance teacher told me that I was not college material, that I should get a cosmetology license and do hair. Now, hear me now, there's nothing wrong with doing hair. There's nothing wrong with it. And that is a vital service in our community. Lord knows it is. But the Lord had something else for me. And if I did not have parents that said, no, the buck does not stop here, who did not advocate for me, I would not be Reverend Dr. Zuleika Adams today. Why am I telling you that? Because all of a sudden now I'm remembering those things. So in addition to all of the changes with COVID, I now have another layer. We now have another layer that we're dealing with. And so this period is very, very charged. It's very, very laden with thoughts, with feelings. And if we're not careful, meaning this, if we don't allow ourselves to feel it, and if we don't find somebody that we can talk to about this stuff, what happens? The stuff goes back like we're used to doing, but because of the intensity of this period, feelings have a life of their own. If they don't pop up one place, they pop up another. And I'm wondering how many of us are having strange dreams all of a sudden. We might be feeling these things physically because you know that we are mind, body, and spirit. If something troubles our mind, guess what? It may show up in our bodies. When we are sick in our bodies, it affects our minds. And all of it affects our spirit. And so during this time that we are struggling in a way that makes it one of the more difficult periods in time. And as we go through this period, the depression and the grief. Now I want to circle back to grief because it's all bundled together in grief. As I said, grief is the appropriate expression and response to loss. You can lose your identification and have a grief reaction. Anybody ever done that? You had to start all over and you wonder why you were feeling sad. Guess what? Your brain signaled to the rest of your body that a loss has happened. And so it's an appropriate response. And if you are on this workshop and you have lost someone to death, let's just talk about that for a minute. Never have we had this experience in our lifetimes that we couldn't be in the hospital and hold the hand of our sick and dying. That does something to our hearts. We've had people that we love that had to transition without us being there. We didn't get a chance to say goodbye. We've had to make decisions about burials and funerals where some of us were not able to be there. And if we were there, it was 10 at a time. The kind of hugs, the kind of physical support that we count on during this time, a hug, a kiss, a holding hand, a word of encouragement. COVID robbed us of that. And we are grieving. Virtual funerals does not take the place of being there at a time of need to be able to say our goodbyes. But we take comfort in the fact that our loved ones were not alone. We take comfort in the fact that the Lord Jesus dispatched his angels at the bedside of our loved one and carried them home. I don't know about you, but I take comfort in that fact. Do I hurt that I was not able to be there? Absolutely. And I'm struggling with it. And I believe somebody else on this line might be struggling with it too. I'm struggling with the fact that things are not going to go back to the way they were. Now, on a good day, I could see the Lord's hand in all of this. I could see the Lord working it out, because some things are going to be better than they were before if we trust God and we allow ourselves to see his signature and his handwriting on this situation. And there are many things that have disturbed our peace. But in order to do that, we have to be able to develop an approach to handling this relentless stress that we're under. And just briefly, I want to talk to you about the AAA approach. We know the AAA when we have a car, right? We call AAA, the Automobile Club of America. You call them, they come right away. No, I take that back. Sometimes they don't come right away. You got to sit and wait, but you have the assurance that they will come. Somebody could preach that right there. They may not come at that moment, but you know they're coming. But when we have relentless stresses, the AAA approach is this. We need to, and each situation, it's not one size fits all, it's not one situation fits all, but we have a choice about whether we want to alter the stress, we want to avoid the stress, or whether we want to accept it. What do I mean by that? When we alter it, if there are some things that you can do to change the situation, you can do that. So an example is when I felt the room was closing in and I needed contact, the Lord gave me an idea to be creative, and I met a friend in the parking lot. I altered the situation. I still socially distanced, but I altered the situation for my own mental and emotional health. That was one aid that I used to approach the relentless stress. The other thing I just want to share that is that I do not watch the news all day, all night anymore. I recognized that it was too much. The trauma was too much. Every day there's a new report about COVID, who died, who was going to die, and it was getting to me. And I made a decision to alter that, and I turned off the news. I watch it once a week to catch up for 20 minutes. If they don't say it in 20 minutes, then somebody will tell me about it later. And so that's the situation that I altered. The other thing, the next thing, is to avoid. Now, what are some things that we can avoid? Well, I can avoid being around people coughing all over me if I wear a mask and I protect myself. I can dodge the bullet, and thank God, it's nothing but the grace and mercy of God that I have dodged the bullet so far, because I do what is required. If there's some place that I know that is vulnerable, I double mask myself. I wear my gloves. I avoid contamination that way. I'm not going to avoid the world because I can't, but I can avoid the risk of contamination, and I can still live the very life that God has given me. And then the third thing is that there are some things we have to accept. What do we have to accept? We have to accept right now that COVID is here and it's going to be here for a minute. It is not in our best interest to act as if there's no COVID and throw all caution to the wind. What do we have to accept? We have to accept that racism, white superiority, systemic racism is here at the moment, and we can make choices about how we respond to it. I am delighted to see all the protests, all of the action, all of the mobilization. That was a response to saying, you know what? Racism is real. Anti-Black sentiment is real. Black matter is real. Let me not act like this is not happening. Let me not act like we are post-racial times. No, we are not. It's real, and out of that acceptance, I'm going to be mobilized to action. And so we talked about shalom. We talked about disturbances to our peace. But now let's talk about how we can make our way back to shalom. And there are many things that we can do. The first thing I want to say is that breathe. People of God, breathe. The Ruach of God, the breath of God, is his gift to us. All of us are one breath away from eternity. One day, each of us, one by one, will take our last breath. It is no accident that so many of these racial incidents are trying to cut off our breath because we know it's. So use the gift that God has given us. Breathe, and breathe on purpose. Inhale the peace of God. Exhale the anxiety of the world. Inhale the grace of God. Exhale those things that would hinder us from being all that we can be. Breathe on purpose. The next thing is make sure that we get up every day. I know if we're depressed or we're sad or we're feeling heavy, we are inclined because our depression has a voice that talks to us. You don't need to get up. You don't need to wash. You don't need to clean the house. No, fight that. Get up every day. Shower. Make our beds. I'm not trying to be offensive, but I am saying that I know what the voice of depression can do to people. And it can cause them to languish in bed and think negative thoughts all day. And I'm telling you that we're coming against that spirit of depression. People, social distance does not mean social isolation. Call somebody, text somebody, put your mask on, meet them at a park. Make sure that your basic needs are attended to. Do you have your medication? Do you have food in the house? Do you have your clean clothes? Now, remember, our routines have been unsettled. So clean clothes are not as easy as it sounds. Trying to go to laundromats, and we have to practice social distancing at laundromats. It's not as easy as it sounds, but we have to make sure that we have those basic needs met so that we feel like we are a part of the human race. Make sure that you can connect to somebody that you can talk to say how you feel. You can talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. Make some confession, girl, I'm not doing so good today. This is not a good day. I cannot see the light of day in this. Say something to me. Find somebody that we can talk to, that we can share, and don't be ashamed of your feelings. Don't be ashamed. We're all going through this. we are not alone. We are all going through this. Some of us have had more losses than others, so we're feeling it differently. This racial onslaught is affecting each one of us, and we need each other. We need to be able to talk, and we need to be able to rely on one another. The Bible says, if there's anything praiseworthy, think on these things. And so I want to leave you with this. I know my time is up, and I've galloped through a ton of information. I pray that it's been helpful and healing in some way. But the Bible says, if there's anything praiseworthy, think on these things. And so people, as we continue through this COVID pandemic, as we work through the onslaught of racial and systemic injustice, as the memories come up, as our dreams and our conscious wakings are flooded with memories and thoughts and body sensation, think about the goodness during this time. Use the time for meditation, prayer, and time with God. Take full advantage to glean what God might be saying and teaching and challenging us to do. Because the song says, there will be glory after this. Hang on, children of God. There will be. Bless you and keep in the name that's above every name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Adams. You have just done a phenomenal presentation for us today. We are the better because of what you have shared with us. A couple of things in the questions we'll present, and I present to Dr. Adams that she can help us with. Let me share with everyone, we are right now, our capable tech team is providing or gaining information so that we can make this presentation available to you, as well as the on-demand ability to review and listen to the presentation. We, of course, have all of your names and information, email information, as you've been assigned or signed up for this room. So when we get all of that information, it will be provided. It will be provided to you. Okay. So let's take a look at some of our questions. Okay. Excuse me, Dr. Adams, let me get back to where I am here. It was asked by someone who is an educator and a youth leader. Do you have any tips, advice, resources on how to approach this conversation, what you shared with us, with young people?
Yes, I do. Our young people are struggling, and they are struggling in many ways. And I think going through the checklist of feelings that I did today with explanation and inviting them to talk about where they land with each one of these things is a very powerful technique to use. Many times our young people don't have language yet to describe their feelings, but they know what they're feeling. And more often than not, our young people act out what they feel rather than speak what they feel. And sometimes what is missing is a lexicon of language. When you feel depressed, you may feel like this. When you feel depressed, you actually may feel angry, and anger will be a sign that you're depressed. When you feel anxious, you know what? Does your heart beat real fast? Or your hands get clammy? Are you worried? There's some things that you might be worried about. Giving language to the very general feeling stage will open up Pandora's box that will be useful. Because once we understand what we're feeling, we have a better chance of managing and coming up with coping strategies that can address that. It's when we don't know and we are driven by these thoughts and feelings that we get into trouble. But once we understand it, then we can have a wider repertoire of ways to respond. Yes, young people need to understand the feeling state so they don't act it out.
Yes, great. Also, it was asked the importance of disconnecting from the news, from how is that a contributor to losing our shalom? The CNN, the MSNBC, even Fox News. Why is that, or how does that feed into our spirit and what it can result in? If you could address that, perhaps.
Sure. Well, people of faith, we have to be careful about what we let into our mental conscience around seeking whom they may destroy. And some of the news is overload. It's overwhelming. It's overload. And when we are bombarded with news that talks about killing, talks about bad policy, talks about death and destruction, if that is what we are allowing our mind to consume for long periods of time, those thoughts have babies. And then those babies have, next thing you know, we are starting to think things through the lens of that negativity. And that's the very antithesis of what God would have for us. And so I'm not anti-news, I'm anti the saturation of the news. And to have your own thermometer to know when you're reaching DEFCON 4 was too much.
Mm-hmm.
And we will know that. So you know what? For instance, with the George Floyd thing, I knew that I could not watch that officer take his life.
All right, I apologize. I'm multitasking. Forgive me. Another question or point that was brought up, which is that it was shared that one of the sisters said that before they go to bed, they decompress. They don't watch the news, so that their peace of mind is restored as they lay down at night. And
Yes.
that's important in keeping and/or as part of mindfulness. I could just put that out there. Any of you, if you say, well, I need to meditation, and perhaps Dr. Adams, you could share this. Meditation for a lot of Christians, we look at it as a hijack of a new age mentality. But I know as you scriptures that tell us that, as you share, think on these things, that think on whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, that we as Christians, throughout David, the scripture, I will meditate on these things in the night watches. So that meditation and focused thinking helps us to stay in touch with our feelings, as well as maintaining our peace, our shalom. And that it is a biblical principle and not principle, it's a biblical response, a healthy response to the struggles of the day.
Absolutely. And it's one of our spiritual disciplines.
Yes.
Meditation, quiet time, is one of the spiritual disciplines. As we seek to conform to the image and the likeness of Christ, we practice spiritual disciplines. We practice meditation. We practice prayer. We practice study. We practice silence. We learn solitude. We learn guidance. We learn confession. It's part of our spiritual formation. And so sitting still in a focused way so that we clear out the noise of the world and allow the voice of God to minister to us. There's nothing new about it. It's what God would love for us. He wants our devoted time, uncontaminated time with him. He wants us still. And what does the psalmist say? He said, be still and know God. One of the ways that you're going to know him is to spend quiet time. When you are in a relationship, you don't spend all your time talking. You spend quiet time so that you can sense the presence of each other, that you can feel the energy of each other. And that's what God wants. He says, be quiet with me. Let me talk. You talk all the time. Let me talk. Let me get word.
Yes. There's, because I want to stay within our time, I got another quick question that may take up the remainder of our time together very quickly. One of our viewers shared that they are a person who internalizes their emotions. How can persons who internalize stay socially balanced when they don't have a desire to be social, when they don't desire to be interactive?
Well, the first question, you don't have to desire it. And there's nothing wrong with solitude. And so the question I would like to know is, if you're not experiencing loneliness, and you have to tell the truth about that, if you're not experiencing loneliness, but you enjoy solitude because you're wired that way, there are many of us who are introverts that need lots of alone time, that enjoy solitude. If you honestly say that you fit in that category and that you enjoy the solitude, and the truth is that if you are a deeply sensitive person, that you are empathic by nature, guess what? People wear you out because you feel them. You feel what they feel, right? And if you're someone constantly listening to other people's trauma, and that's when it becomes compassion fatigue, which is vicarious trauma. We start to feel all of that, and we have trouble separating ourselves from all of the stories that we have heard. So if you're that kind of person that is an introvert and you need that time to refuel, but there's nothing else attached, you're not hiding. You're not hiding, and you're not avoiding all of your feelings. If you fall into that category, then enjoy your solitude. You're made for it. It's okay.
Yes. Well, everyone, I know that we could continue this conversation for the rest of the afternoon, but our time will not allow. I'd like to say thank you. Thank you, Dr. Adams. You have just given me so much to continue to consider and talk on. As one of my professors used to say, there's still some meat on the bone, so we could continue to just work this down and continue to gain and glean from it. I also say to everyone who has been on this Zoom live that, as I shared, we have all of your email information when they on demand, which is the actual recording of this presentation, as well as the slides are up you'll be given an email of directive on how you can access that information. Thank you all. It has been an exceptional session. Thank you to our technical staff who has guided us through so that Dr. Adams was able just to help us without having to move and work it out. But we want to say thank you to everyone. Your presence, your energy helped this presentation this morning be all that God intended for it to be. Remember, let's keep our peace of mind. Let's keep our shalom gift, that peace of God that goes past even our own understanding. Thank you, Dr. Adams. Thank you, technical staff. Thank you, Congress, for just allowing this new normal to be introduced to us in such an efficient and professional, yet Christ-centered way. I pray that I've helped someone and guiding you through today, and let's continue to expect the great. Tonight on Facebook Live, there, get more of Dr. Adams. There is a presentation tonight on Facebook Live that you will be able to join in on and hear some more. It's a panel discussion with some outstanding thinkers and great minds. It's going to be really, really good. That is tonight at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock on Facebook Live. There's a panel discussion topics that are going to be shared tonight. Will continue to help you on how we maneuver through the new normal, getting ready for a new thing. Isaiah 43:19. Until tonight, may the peace of God be with you, abound in his grace, and continue to have a productive day. Thank you, Dr. Adams, again. Thank you, tech team. God bless all of you. God's peace and good journey.
Amen. Amen. God bless you.
God bless you.